The bitter stench of charred oak invaded my senses as Grandpa's meticulously restored rowboat, a $50,000 masterpiece of polished walnut from 1958, erupted in flames before my eyes, devouring decades of family legacy in a cruel blaze that twisted my gut like a knife. And there stood Victoria Langford, the self-appointed queen of our neighborhood association, smirking in her pristine golf attire as if she'd just won some petty trophy, already thumbing through her phone to summon the authorities. With that smug declaration that maybe now I'd learn to comply with her endless demands. What she failed to realize, in her blind arrogance, was that over the past 4 years I'd methodically acquired 70% of the shoreline parcels around Crystal Haven Lake, turning the tide in a war she didn't even know she'd started, owning the very ground she thought she ruled. You see, if you've ever had a family treasure torched by some overzealous busybody drunk on their own authority, you'd understand the rage bubbling inside me, the kind that simmers quietly at first, masking the storm to come. Drop your thoughts on payback strategies in the comments. I'm always open to inspiration for the next chapter, and tell me where you're tuning in from, especially if you're battling your own association horrors. Give this a like if it resonates. Let's count how many of us are out there pushing back against these small-time tyrants. It all kicked off about a month earlier, over a simple breakfast at Riley's Cafe, when Victoria swept in clutching her ever-present notepad, the one that signaled trouble for whoever crossed her path, approaching my table with that grating tone that could curdle milk, reminding me yet again about the mandatory boat licensing charge I hadn't acknowledged. I savored my coffee, letting the bitterness mirror the resentment building in my chest, and flatly told her I had no intention of forking over a dime, because deep down, after returning to Crystal Haven 2 years prior following my father's passing, inheriting our ancestral cabin and his prized possession, that walnut rowboat Grandpa had assembled piece by piece with his own calloused hands. I'm Ethan Hale, 54, ex-Navy SEAL, who'd cashed out my supply chain tech firm to spend those final months with Dad, cherishing the evenings we'd drift on that boat, inhaling the faint aroma of cigar smoke and engine oil that whispered of unbreakable bonds across generations. Victoria's complexion shifted through hues of fury, insisting the boating ordinance had been voted in legitimately, demanding $600 per craft along with compulsory association badges, as if rules were sacred scripture handed down from on high. But I'd been observing her schemes for ages, piecing together her playbook. This outsider who'd infiltrated our lakeside haven 4 years back from a flashy Arizona enclave, dragging along her spouse who ran those shady cash advance shops that preyed on the vulnerable, securing her position as head of the Lakeside Estates Association by a razor-thin margin, vowing to upscale our serene retreat. Around Crystal Haven, 52 lots dotted the water's edge, split between long-standing clans like mine and affluent newcomers chasing postcard-perfect escapes. But Victoria viewed it all as a cash cow, not a sanctuary. You know what's intriguing, Victoria? I remarked, setting aside my cup. The Millers unloaded their place recently, the Pattersons as well, both hammered with hefty penalties from your group, and oddly enough, your sister's firm snapped them up. Her grip on the notepad faltered slightly, dismissing it as open knowledge, yet I pressed on, noting how associations couldn't impose new levies on long-standing assets without full agreement, per state regulations I'd meticulously reviewed. The cafe fell into a hush, Hank Novak feigning interest in his newspaper while eavesdropping, Clara Benson pausing her fork midway, these veterans of the lake who'd muttered about Victoria's edicts, lawn length infractions, mismatched fence hues, disallowed wildlife feeders, but most shelled out to evade conflict, fearing the label of agitator. Well, someone had to step up, to challenge the status quo that was eroding our heritage. This isn't boot camp, Ethan, she snapped, her disdain for my military background evident in that calculated sneer, implying I couldn't cherry-pick directives. But she'd crossed a line, igniting a personal vendetta, and in that moment, I felt the old instincts kick in, the ones honed in Iraq's spotting adversarial maneuvers, like her coveting the docks for her cousin's speedboat venture. Yeah, Hank had tipped me off about that, along with those mysterious boundary markers popping up just before evictions. She stormed off, her high-end leisure wear rustling like a warning, leaving behind a cloud of overpowering fragrance that hung heavy, a promise of escalation. The resolve hardened in me, a quiet fire stoked by memories of Dad's warnings about encroachers, and I knew then that the preparations I'd set in motion upon my return were about to pay dividends, though Hank cautioned me later, sliding over to my booth with a worried glance. She's got allies, her Pilates circle on the committee, her partner's wealth, builders hovering like vultures. You really want to stir this hornet's nest? I managed a grin, the first genuine one in days, assuring him I'd been gearing up for this confrontation from the start, with some savvy property acquisitions under my belt that would shift the balance, leaving him puzzled as I alluded to an impending farewell ceremony, not for a person, but for an era that was fading fast. Awakening at first light to a barrage of citations plastered across my door like accusations, 19 infractions in all, tallying up to $4,200 in dues, from turf exceeding limits by a mere half-inch, seriously, to an unapproved shade of navy on the shed, and the audacious one about displaying the stars and stripes without clearance. My blood boiled at the pettiness, the assault on freedoms I defended overseas. Then came the white SUV, disgorging Victoria and her entourage, Linda Myers and Mark Fletcher, the duo who trailed her like obedient shadows, commencing their inspection ritual, Mark even brandishing a tape measure for the grass, while she narrated for her recording device, lamenting how such neglect dragged down the vibe, hinting that fresh ownership might elevate standards. What she overlooked, in her hubris, was my post-combat vigilance, the network of surveillance gear blanketing my land with crystal-clear video and sound that captured every intrusive step, and the gem was their offhand chatter when they assumed privacy. Victoria confiding to Mark that once these stubborn holdovers buckled, valuations would soar, her cousin already lining up backers for the dock overhaul. How many more spots to secure? He queried, and she replied, 5 would suffice, the Bensons are nearly cracked. That fueled my counterstrike, a meticulously composed certified mail to each committee figure, declaring their overreach illegal, backed by my own documented proofs. Grass at precise regulation height, with dated images, shed paint matching bylaws to the code, and invoking the national statute, overriding any flag bans. I carbon copied all 52 owners, appending the incriminating audio of Victoria's scheming, framing it as a gentle nudge on our entitlements, because sometimes bureaucracy, wielded wisely, becomes the sharpest blade. The next day, Riley's cafe buzzed with outrage, Hank brandishing my dispatch like a manifesto, recounting his own slap for a supposedly menacing yard ornament. It's wielding a garden tool, not a weapon. While Clara vented about her $200 wildlife station penalty for drawing undesirable species, apparently blue jays didn't make the cut, and Alex Kim griped over fees for aromatic barbecues. Even the transplants joining the chorus of discontent, the brew tasting like uprising in the making. The Urgent Association assembly that Thursday evening crammed the rec hall to bursting, Victoria striding and clad in her executive ensemble that screamed multi-level marketing guru rather than visionary leader, proclaiming amid rising tensions a proposed waterway enhancement levy of $2,500 per lakeside holding, her presentation flaunting glossy visions of revamped docks, subtly branded in corners with Langford Speedboat Haven arriving shortly, her cousin Dylan lounging rearward in branded gear, as unsubtle as a billboard. The ballot rushed forward before protests could mount, her loyalists sinking their affirmations, concluding 28-24 in favor. If you dismissed the 4 absentees conveniently overlooked, invoices forthcoming, she trilled, sealing the session with glee. That spurred my deeper probe, scouring county archives online. Michigan's deeds portal a goldmine of transparency. And what emerged chilled me to the core. 6 distress sales in 2 years encircling our waters, each scooped by Harborview Partners LLC at bargain basement rates. The corporate maze winding back to Victoria's kin, the cycle evident. Torment, sanctions, seizure, insider acquisition. Not stewardship, but outright plunder. I grabbed my device, initiating calls, for I'd been collaborating discreetly with backers to secure available plots over years, handling tenants with dignity, preserving residencies. But now urgency demanded acceleration, contacting my lead investor to extend propositions across the board, because if Victoria fancied herself a real estate mogul, she'd soon learn I'd cornered the market ethically, outmaneuvering her at her own game. Come Monday dawn, arriving at the harbor to encounter a barricade fortress newly erected, electronic locks, monitors, the lot, a placard declaring safety mandates requiring association passes, my rowboat imprisoned beyond, the fuel stop clerk opposite shaking his head at the chaos. Folks rebuffed since early hours. Victoria overseeing the install personally at crack of light, the firm tied to her spouse's relative. Naturally, my entry fob rejected, the office line yielding delays of months for approval, the indignation surging like old battlefield adrenaline at this newcomer caging a vessel integral to our lineage. That afternoon buried me in courthouse stacks, inhaling aged parchment scents, Dad's vague recollections of safeguards prompting the hunt, unearthing after hours a 1952 covenant ensuring perpetual access for founding holders and heirs, impervious to later collectives, the verbiage ironclad, foresight from drafters who'd anticipated such encroachments. My counsel, Rachel Cohen, let out an appreciative sigh upon review, affirming they couldn't nullify precedents older than their regime, exposing board participants to individual accountability, coverage void for deliberate breaches. We penned missives sharp as daggers, and by dusk I was affixing laminated duplicates across the barrier with industrial fasteners, the impacts resounding over the waves like declarations of defiance. The crisis summit days later descended into glorious disarray, Linda blanching at the covenants, accusing Victoria of misinformation, Mark dialing his advisor in panic, vowing not to forfeit his assets over her dock ambitions, 2 abdications tendered pre-agenda, the obstruction dismantled by morning's first race. Preparing the rowboat for a commemorative outing that Thursday, the cloying odor of corn syrup and fuel assaulted me instantly, lifting the hood to verify sabotage amateurish enough for a sitcom. The culprit mimicking film tropes, unaware sweetener, merely settles and obstructs, reparable with know-how from patching vehicles in desert outposts. The harbor's recordings oddly glitchy, but Hank had strolled his restless pup at odd hours, spotting Langford's kin near my berth with a container. Quotes ran $4,000 for fixes, yet I tackled it solo over the weekend, grime-coated fingers evoking resilience drilled in service, pondering the broader canvas unfolding. For 4 years my consortium had amassed holdings covertly, 36 of 52 parcels now, 70% dominion, all above board and shrouded, logistics expertise teaching that triumphs precede awareness of conflict. That night, instructing my overseer to ready the titles, the strategy nearing fruition, Victoria oblivious she'd been outflanked since my arrival. But duty called for one final voyage on Grandpa's craft, tracing ancestral paths, though fate decreed interference, some souls compelled to corrupt purity. As I cast off under tranquil surfaces, glimpsing Victoria spying from afar with optics and device, the serenity deceptive, for what ensued would mark the vessel's swan song, unbeknownst to me then. Shouts pierced the early hours, frantic cries slicing dawn, rushing out to witness inferno consuming the rowboat, walnuts splintering in agony, acrid plumes staining the vista as locals battled with makeshift streams, the blaze victorious by siren's wail, reducing heritage to drifting cinders. Victoria appeared impeccably groomed amid the disheveled, trailed by a burly enforcer in association garb, her fresh portfolio clutched triumphantly, decrying the perils of lax standards, flaunting forged assessments branding the craft hazardous. You incinerated my legacy, I growled, the timbre echoing threats that once deterred foes, prompting her retreat before countering with accusations, dialing emergency with theatrical dread, portraying me as menacing. Patrol units descended swiftly, Victoria embodying fragility, brandishing her dossier as damning proof, urging restraint while they unraveled the mess. I complied methodically, credentials from discharge guiding composure, detailing the artifact's worth and suspicious timing post her sham review. And that's when solidarity surged, Clara advancing with device aloft, footage capturing shadows at my sight pre-dawn, one donning that telltale jacket, Hank contributing vehicular plates, soon a cadre of residents encircling with corroborations, Alex delivering the coup de grace via his advanced setup, framing Dylan's nocturnal pilfering in stark detail, visage illuminated unmistakably. Detective Riley reviewed the compilations, demeanor stealing, escorting Victoria for interrogation, dismissing her claims of exemption, no shield for felonies like torching or deceit. The claims adjuster, a seasoned pro from Chicago, dissected the remnants with narrative flair, labeling it bungled accelerant work from novice inspirations, valuing the loss at $50,000, vowing pursuit of restitution. Victoria's frantic rally that eve to legitimize the demolition retroactively faltered, loyalists recoiling at complicity risks, session dissolving amid mentions of racketeering, her flight signaling collapse. Alone by the vacant mooring, embers sent lingering like closure deferred, yet transitions beckoned, tomorrow's tribute transcending a vessel, my legal arsenal primed, holdings veiled, the charter's termination provision unknown to them, poised for revelation amid scrutiny. Meeting Rachel at her firm the following day, her expression gleamed with discovery, unveiling a gem in the association's founding text, Clause 16.3 tucked away, permitting unilateral disbandment by any holder commanding over half the estates, a safeguard against overreach she'd unwittingly armed me with through my 70% stake. We could dismantle it instantly, she beamed, and her auditor's delve exposed $250,000 siphoned to kin, harbor allocations pocketed, inflated deals to insiders, not mere graft, but a familial vault, stripping protections and exposing assets to seizure, her own ledger's the noose. Surrounded by years of acquisitions in Dad's den, the blueprint sprawled like a command center, initiated from his alerts on looming exploiters, fortifying our haven preemptively. 36 deeds via multiple entities, each transaction equitable, lifetimes granted, returns offered, no coercion, the antithesis of Victoria's predation, the aroma of his pipe blending with fulfilled vows. A detective's update elevated the stakes, federal probes into laundering via her spouse's ventures, my findings catalyzing a broader net. Yet focus remained on the impending disclosure, her empire's fall broadcasted, succeeded by safeguards ensuring equity, resident governance, banishing autocracy. The bunker-like setup in my lower level buzzed with schematics, financial dissections, fortified communications shielding allies, backups redundant, Rachel arriving laden with filings, piercing corporate shields via precedents, her minutes self-incriminating, Alex orchestrating publicity drops at the event, barn gatherings forging unity, tales of torment fueling resolve, maintaining facade to lure complacency, her boasts unwitting eulogies. Pre-dawn eve, verifications complete, authorities aligned, Marines reinforcing, the tribute's inserts concealing the bombshell, poised to liberate. Victoria's frantic dawn raid with bogus writs faltered against authenticity checks and federal presence, her lawn summit crumbling into desertions, obstructions thwarted by kin networks, rants exposing desperation, attendees ballooning, enforcers poised, streams surging, her emergence a futile spectacle, halted as I unveiled holdings, deeds projected, dissolution invoked per her rules, embezzlement exposed slide by slide, agents advancing, cuffs clicking for her and cohorts, RICO enveloping the syndicate. The eruption of acclaim marked liberation, transitions to trust sealed amid jubilation, protections eternal, festivities bridging divides, sentences meted. Victoria 5 years, spouse 17, Dylan probation, recoveries funding rebirths, harbor democratized, values ascending sans exodus, accolades flowing, workshops birthing replicas like legacy renewed, my mornings serene, observing continuity. Her former abode repurposed kindly, the saga a beacon for others. And so, with the waters calm once more, reflecting a hard-won peace that honors the past while securing the future, I raise a toast to those unbreakable ties that bind us, to the quiet strength that turns injustice into triumph, closing this chapter on a note of enduring victory. But tell me, in the face of such tyranny, was the calculated retribution justified? Or does it blur the lines of morality? Where do you stand on vigilante justice when the system fails? And how far would you go to protect your own legacy?